Decker, a former DEA agent, never expected to face danger again, until Luke's brutal attack on Lisa pulled him back into a world of violence, betrayal, and a €2 million cartel heist that would change everything. Please subscribe and share for daily new update of crime story, and watch till end. Decker was once a respected and feared DEA agent, known across the department for his ability to dismantle dangerous drug operations that others were too afraid to touch. He did not believe in half measures. When he went after criminals, he went in hard, driven by anger, instinct, and an unshakable belief that violence was sometimes the only language criminals understood. At first, his results made him untouchable. Drug houses were raided, traffickers arrested, and major shipments seized. But behind those successes was a growing problem that no one wanted to confront. Decker did not know when to stop. Every raid pushed him further. Every confrontation made him more brutal, and every victory fed his belief that force solved everything. Complaints began to pile up quietly. Suspects claimed excessive force. Fellow agents reported his reckless behavior. Body cam footage showed moments that could not be justified, even in the chaos of drug raids. Decker brushed it all off, convinced that the system was weak and that criminals deserved whatever happened to them. But the department could only protect him for so long. One final operation changed everything. A routine bust turned violent, and Decker crossed a line that could not be erased. The suspect survived, but the evidence was clear. The agency had no choice. Decker was dismissed, his badge taken, his career erased overnight. The fall hit harder than any bullet ever could. Without the job, Decker lost his identity. The structure, the purpose, and the adrenaline that once fueled him vanished. Friends from the force slowly stopped calling. Nights became longer, quieter, and heavier. He moved through life like a shadow, taking small jobs, keeping his head down, and trying to bury the man he used to be. But violence had shaped him for too long. It lived under his skin, waiting. That night, the city felt no different than any other. Decker walked through a dimly lit parking lot, the hum of distant traffic echoing around concrete walls. The air was heavy, and his thoughts were elsewhere, lost in regret and memory. Then he heard it, a sharp voice, followed by a cry. His instincts flared instantly, the old training snapping back into place without effort. He saw them near a parked car. A man, later known as Luke, was aggressively shoving a woman, Lisa, screaming at her over money. Each movement was violent, controlled by rage. Decker froze for a brief moment. He had promised himself to stay out of trouble, to never step into chaos again. But his body moved before his mind could argue. He had seen this before, too many times, and walking away felt impossible. As Luke raised his hand again, Decker stepped forward, knowing deep down that this moment would change everything. The past he had been running from had finally caught up with him, and there was no turning back. Decker stepped closer, keeping his movements slow and deliberate, careful not to provoke the man any further. Luke's voice echoed through the empty parking lot, thick with anger and entitlement. His grip on Lisa's arm was so tight that her fingers trembled. Decker could see the fear in her eyes, the kind that came from long exposure to violence rather than a single outburst. He told Luke again to let her go and calm down, reminding him that nothing good would come from continuing like this. Luke laughed, a sharp and ugly sound, and shoved Lisa aside before turning his full attention to Decker. He accused him of sticking his nose where it didn't belong, and demanded that he walk away. The smell of alcohol and sweat hung in the air as Luke stepped forward, trying to intimidate him with size and aggression. Decker recognized the tactic instantly. It was the behavior of a man used to control through fear, a man who believed violence made him powerful. When Luke swung without warning, everything happened in seconds. Decker reacted automatically, blocking the punch and stepping inside Luke's reach. His body moved faster than thought, guided by muscle memory built over years of raids and street fights. A sharp strike to Luke's torso knocked the air from his lungs. Another move sent him stumbling backward into a parked car. The metal dented loudly, echoing through the lot. Luke roared in pain and rage, refusing to stay down. He lunged again, wild and reckless. Decker grabbed him, twisted his arm, and forced him to the ground. The move was clean and efficient, designed to disable without causing permanent damage. Luke thrashed beneath him, shouting threats and curses, promising revenge. Decker pressed his knee into Luke's back, just long enough to keep him still, his jaw clenched as he fought the urge to go further. Lisa slid down the side of the car and collapsed onto the pavement, breathing hard. Her face was streaked with tears, her body shaking from shock. Decker released Luke and stepped away, raising his hands. He knew staying on top of the man would only make things worse. He had learned that lesson too late in his career, and he refused to repeat it now. The sound of approaching sirens cut through the tension. Red and blue lights washed over the parking lot as police cruisers arrived from multiple directions. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Luke immediately began screaming accusations, claiming Decker had attacked him without reason. Blood ran from his lip, and he used it to sell his story. Decker stayed calm, following every instruction, identifying himself and explaining the situation. Lisa found her voice despite her fear. She told the officers exactly what had happened, how Luke had been beating her, how Decker stepped in to stop it. Her statement changed the tone of the scene. The officers separated everyone, checked injuries, and reviewed the situation carefully. After a tense wait, the decision was made. Decker was not arrested. Luke was warned and restrained, his anger no longer convincing. As Decker walked away, the adrenaline faded, leaving behind exhaustion and a familiar ache in his chest. He had tried to escape his past, but that night proved it was never truly gone. The morning light felt harsh to Decker as he sat alone in a small diner, nursing a cup of coffee he had barely touched. Sleep had not come easily after the incident in the parking lot. His mind kept replaying the fight, the sound of Luke hitting the car, and the look in Lisa's eyes when it was finally over. He told himself it was finished, just another reminder of a life he no longer lived. He was wrong. Lisa appeared outside the diner, scanning the interior until her eyes met his. She hesitated before stepping inside, moving cautiously as if afraid he might disappear. When she sat across from him, Decker noticed the bruises more clearly in the daylight. Some were fresh, others older, hidden beneath makeup and long sleeves. They told a story of repeated abuse that went far beyond one violent night. She explained why she had come. Luke was not just an angry boyfriend. He was deeply involved with a powerful drug cartel that moved large amounts of money across borders. The argument in the parking lot had been about cash from a recent deal, money Luke believed belonged entirely to him. Lisa admitted she had tried to take some of it, hoping to escape him for good. That mistake nearly cost her life. Lisa then revealed the truth that changed everything. Luke's car had been seized by police after his arrest, and it was sitting in an impound lot. Hidden inside the trunk was 2 million euros in cartel money, untouched and unaccounted for. The cartel did not know where it was yet, but they would soon. When they did, anyone connected to Luke would be in danger. Decker listened in silence, every word weighing heavily on him. He knew the world Lisa was describing. He had spent years dismantling pieces of it, watching how greed destroyed everyone it touched. She made him an offer. If he helped her retrieve the money before the cartel realized where it was, she would give him 10%. It was more money than he had seen in years, enough to disappear, to start over somewhere far away. For a brief moment, Decker considered walking away. He reminded himself that he was no longer a cop, no longer protected by a badge or a system. Getting involved meant crossing lines he had promised never to cross again. But he also knew the truth. That money would never be used for anything good. If the cartel recovered it, it would fuel more violence, more broken lives like Lisa's. Decker agreed, though he did not celebrate the decision. He set strict conditions, insisting they move quickly and quietly. Lisa nodded, relief and fear mixing on her face. She trusted him because she had seen what he could do, and that trust unsettled him. As they left the diner separately, Decker felt the familiar pull of danger closing in. The past he had tried to bury was not just calling him back, it was dragging him straight into its depths. Far from the quiet diner where Decker had made his decision, the missing money had already triggered panic in the criminal underworld. News traveled fast inside the cartel, faster than the police or any official channel. Luke had failed, and failure was never tolerated. The 2 million euros represented more than cash. It was power, reputation, and trust, all of which had now been shaken. Vargas, the cartel boss, reacted without hesitation. He was a man who ruled through fear and precision, someone who never raised his voice because he never had to. To him, the solution was simple. Find the money and remove anyone who stood in the way. For that task, he summoned Gage. Gage was not a soldier or a street thug. He was a professional, a man shaped by violence and discipline. His reputation was built on efficiency rather than cruelty, though cruelty came easily when required. He asked few questions and never failed. When Vargas explained the situation, Gage listened carefully, committing every detail to memory. Luke was compromised. The car was impounded. The money was missing. Someone had intervened. Gage began by tracing Luke's last known movements. He reviewed police reports, surveillance footage, and witness statements through corrupt contacts inside the system. Patterns quickly emerged. The parking lot incident stood out. A former Gage agent had been present. That detail caught Gage's attention. Men like Decker did not involve themselves without reason. Experience told him this was no coincidence. As the day progressed, Gage assembled his team. Each man had a specific role, and each understood the consequences of failure. Gage emphasized speed and silence. The longer the money stayed missing, the greater the risk of exposure. He ordered his men to locate the impounded vehicle first, knowing that would reveal how far the situation had already escalated. When Gage arrived at the police impound lot, under the pretense of legitimate paperwork, his suspicions were confirmed. The car had been breached, and its contents were gone. The confirmation ignited a cold fury. This was no random theft. Someone had known exactly where to look and what to take. Gage shifted focus immediately. Money always left a trail, and so did fear. Luke's girlfriend became the priority. Women close to men like Luke often knew more than they admitted, and they made mistakes under pressure. Gage instructed his men to track her movements quietly, using phones, cameras, and informants. As evening fell, the pieces came together. Lisa had resurfaced, staying at a local hotel under someone else's name. That was all Gage needed. He prepared to move, confident that fear would do the rest of the work for him. For Gage, this was just another assignment. For Decker and Lisa, it was the beginning of a hunt they could not outrun. The cartel had noticed the missing money, and once its attention turned toward you, escape was never simple. Night had fallen over the city, turning streets and alleys into shadows where danger could hide easily. Decker moved carefully, every step calculated, every sound analyzed. He had scouted the police impound lot earlier that day, memorizing the layout, guard positions, and camera angles. Now, under the cover of darkness, he approached again, carrying only what he needed: gloves, bolt cutters, and a sense of purpose honed from years in dangerous situations. This was no ordinary theft. It was a mission that required precision, silence, and speed. The lot was heavily guarded. Officers patrolled on foot, and surveillance cameras swept the area in slow, deliberate arcs. Decker waited, timing each movement to avoid detection. His experience in high-stress operations told him exactly when to move, when to pause, and when to strike. One wrong step would compromise everything, and he knew the cartel would be watching for any sign of weakness. Using bolt cutters, Decker swiftly clipped the padlock of the gate. The metallic snap echoed slightly, but the guards were out of earshot. He slipped inside, crouching low behind cars and crates, blending into the shadows. Each breath was controlled, each heartbeat measured. The familiar rush of adrenaline surged through him, not excitement, but focus, clarity, the kind that only came from life-or-death situations. He reached Luke's impounded car. Its black paint reflected the dimmed streetlights, and the trunk held the secret that had drawn him here. 2 million euros in cash. Carefully, he opened it and verified the bundles inside. The money smelled faintly of dampness and ink, but that hardly mattered. What mattered was that it was real, accessible, and unguarded at that exact moment. Decker allowed himself a fraction of satisfaction, but reminded himself there was no time for hesitation. He closed the trunk carefully, locking it back into place as if it had never been opened. The escape had to be equally flawless. Decker retraced his steps, avoiding guards and cameras, slipping through shadows, and using the natural cover of parked vehicles. Each movement was silent but deliberate, a dance perfected over years of similar high-risk operations. By the time he exited the lot, the adrenaline coursing through his veins had sharpened his senses to an almost unnatural level. Once clear, Decker quickly drove Lisa to a small, nondescript hotel. He instructed her in no uncertain terms. No calls, no messages, no leaving the room. The cartel was already mobilizing. Any exposure could lead to immediate danger. Lisa nodded, fear and relief battling in her eyes. She trusted him because she had no choice, and because she had witnessed firsthand what he was capable of. Decker knew that protecting her was as important as securing the money. He spent a few minutes outside the hotel, scanning the perimeter for any sign of trouble. Shadows moved differently at night. Every pedestrian or passing car could be a threat. He felt the familiar tension settle in his chest. This was only the beginning. Retrieving the money had been the easy part. Keeping it safe from a cartel that would stop at nothing was a far greater challenge. The night was quiet, almost eerily so, but Decker knew it was only a temporary calm before the storm that was coming. Every decision from this point forward would determine who survived and who would not. The morning after Decker had hidden Lisa in the hotel, the calm was shattered by the relentless reach of the cartel. Gage had already begun piecing together the events of the night before. From his perspective, the theft of 2 million euros from an impounded car was not just a minor inconvenience, it was a direct challenge to his authority and his reputation within the cartel. Failure was not an option. Every second that the money remained unaccounted for only intensified his anger and focus. He could feel the walls closing in, and he knew that Lisa was the weak link he could exploit to find the cash. Through his network of informants and surveillance, Gage quickly located the hotel where Lisa was staying. She had unknowingly left small traces of her presence phone signals, a brief conversation with the hotel desk, and careless movements observed by the staff. Gage's men converged silently, moving with precision that only professionals trained in violence could achieve. They entered the hotel with the intention of finding Lisa before she could act or escape. The lobby was empty at first, but the front desk clerk's nervous expression betrayed knowledge. Threats were whispered under the edge of knives, ensuring cooperation without unnecessary noise. The room number was soon revealed. Panic shot through her as she realized she had been taken. Gage moved quickly, exiting the hotel with Lisa in tow, leaving Decker surrounded by a scene of overturned furniture and incapacitated men. His instincts screamed at him, but he could not follow without a plan. From a distance, Gage forced Lisa to call Decker with a chilling ultimatum: deliver the money, or she would be killed. Lisa's voice trembled as she spoke the words, but her fear was mirrored by the resolve in Decker's eyes. He knew that rushing blindly into this situation would be suicide. Every decision now had to be precise, every move calculated. The cartel had escalated, and the hunt for the 2 million euros had become a deadly game, one that would test Decker's skills, patience, and determination to their absolute limits. Decker knew he couldn't face Gage and the cartel alone. The situation had escalated beyond anything he could handle by himself, and every instinct he had learned as a D agent screamed that rushing in without backup would mean certain death. He reached out to Jean, an old comrade who had saved his life more times than he could count. Jean was calm under pressure, precise and deadly accurate, a sniper whose patience and skill were unmatched. Together, they devised a plan to reclaim the money and rescue Lisa, understanding that any mistake could cost lives. The rendezvous point was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a place heavy with shadows and silence. Decker drove cautiously, checking his mirrors, observing every movement in the street. The warehouse loomed ahead, dark and imposing, the perfect setting for a deadly confrontation. Jean positioned himself on a nearby rooftop, surveying the location through his sniper scope, every detail of the area committed to memory. He would provide cover and take precise shots if any of the cartel's men tried to escape or attack. Decker arrived at the warehouse entrance, the bag of money clutched tightly. He stepped out carefully, showing no fear, every movement controlled and deliberate. Gage emerged from the shadows, holding Lisa as a human shield, his men flanking him in a tight formation. Gage's eyes were calculating, filled with suspicion and rage. He knew something was off. Decker pretended to negotiate, placing the bag down on the ground and keeping his hands visible. He offered only part of the money, demanding Lisa's safe release before he would hand over the rest. Gage hesitated, uncertain whether he was being double-crossed, but the cartel's code of violence left him with no choice but to comply for now. Then chaos erupted. One of Gage's men lunged for the money bag, unaware that Decker had rigged it with a small explosive. The bag detonated instantly, obliterating the thug and sending shockwaves across the warehouse. Gunfire erupted in every direction. Jean's first shot hit true, taking out another attacker and forcing the others to scatter. Decker moved with brutal efficiency, his combat skills honed over years of experience, neutralizing threats one by one. The sound of bullets ricocheting and the explosion of the bag filled the air, but Decker's focus never wavered. He was methodical, precise, and lethal. Amid the chaos, another thug tried to seize the bag. Decker intercepted him before he could react, striking with a calculated force that left no room for mercy. Gage's confidence faltered as he witnessed Decker's skill, a kind of efficiency that left no survivors. He realized that surrender might be his only option, but it was already too late. Decker's strategy and Jean's sniper fire had decimated the cartel team. Finally, the warehouse was silent, except for the heavy breathing of the two men. Gage, panicked and desperate, offered Decker the money. Decker didn't hesitate. He struck immediately, ending Gage before he could make a move, wiping out the cartel's leadership in one final, decisive action. The 2 million euros was still in play, but the threat that had pursued it relentlessly was gone. Decker and Jean had survived, battered but alive, their skills and strategy proving that experience and precision could overcome even the deadliest enemies. The warehouse fell silent after the firefight, smoke curling through the broken windows, dust settling over shattered crates and the bodies of the cartel operatives. Decker took a moment to catch his breath, scanning the area for any remaining threats. His eyes fell on Jean, who had been wounded by a stray bullet but was alive, his face pale and tense. Decker quickly moved to his friend, assessing the injury. It was serious, but not fatal, and he knew they had to leave immediately before any reinforcements arrived. Every second counted. Decker grabbed Jean and helped him to his feet, supporting him as they moved toward the exit. The money bag was still in Decker's hands, the weight of it a constant reminder of the chaos they had just survived. Each step was cautious, but urgent, as the city outside was unpredictable. Sirens could be heard in the distance, police and bystanders approaching the scene, unaware of the violence that had just unfolded. Decker's instincts told him that staying put was not an option. Just as they reached the street, a sudden movement caught Decker's attention. Lisa stepped out from the shadows, a gun raised and aimed directly at him. Her eyes were hard, determined, and filled with betrayal. Decker's stomach sank as he realized the truth. She had been manipulating him all along. Her plan had been to use Decker as skills to recover the money and claim it for herself. Every word of trust, every desperate plea had been a lie. Before Decker could react, Jean's remaining presence of mind took over. He fired a single precise shot, hitting Lisa before she could pull the trigger. The sound echoed through the empty streets, final and uncompromising. Decker felt a surge of conflicting emotions, relief, anger, and exhaustion, all mixed together. The threat had ended, but at a cost that weighed heavily on him. There was no celebration, only the stark reality of survival and betrayal. Decker turned to Jean, helping him into the car. The engine started with a roar, and they sped away from the warehouse, leaving behind the chaos and destruction. The city blurred past them, but Decker's mind was focused on what came next. They had survived a battle that most people would never even imagine. The cartel was gone, the money secured, but their lives were forever changed. Blood, betrayal, and violence had marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. After a few hours of careful driving, they found a safe place to stop. Decker handed Jean 500,000 euros, a portion of the money as promised. Jean looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and pain in his eyes. They exchanged no words, only a nod, acknowledging the unspoken bond forged through shared danger and mutual trust. Each man carried the weight of the night's events in his mind, the lives taken, the close calls, and the lessons learned. As they parted ways, Decker felt the first real sense of freedom he had experienced in years. The past had chased him relentlessly, but now he had the chance to start over, scarred but alive. Jean would find his own path, and Decker would find his, the two men forever changed by the chaos they had endured. The 2 million euros was a symbol of danger, greed, and survival, but more than that, it represented a new beginning. As the city lights faded in the rearview mirror, Decker allowed himself a brief, quiet moment of reflection. For the first time in a long time, he felt that perhaps, after all the violence and betrayal, he could finally reclaim some measure of peace.